Welcome to another episode of the Emulsion podcast, a show for chefs who want to think better, increase their performance, and believe that it's possible to take lessons from what others have learned. I am your host, Justin Khanna, and I'd love to continue the conversation with you from this episode on my online Circle community. There you can share your 2 cents and learn about supporting the show on justinkhanna.com/support. For your convenience, it's also linked up in the description of your podcast player. Let's get into the show. What is up, folks? Welcome back to the Emulsion podcast. My guest today is Saori Kawano from Korin. She's honestly one of the kindest and sweetest human beings on the planet, and it has been a joy to be able to get to know her and actually record a conversation with her today. We're, of course, going to talk about the upcoming anniversary, the 40th anniversary that Korin is about to celebrate next year, but also her history as an entrepreneur was fascinating to hear about. And then, of course, one of the upcoming partnerships that I think not just a nod towards her experience in her history, but she's partnering with creators now, just like me. And that's one of the most exciting things. Like, culinary school Justin would have told you were crazy to say that was actually happening, but it is. And so I'm excited that the partnership between myself and Korin, where I can recommend things, you folks can buy them at no extra charge, but then you're able to support me through an affiliate program, is now live. And so that link is, of course, in the description of this podcast, and it's going to be something that you're going to start to see as I start to work more closely with Korin in a lot of gear videos that I know that all of you know and love. This conversation was not only inspiring because Korin is such a pivotal business, I would say, in this industry, and especially for chefs in New York and for chefs based in the US to get high quality, consistent production knives from Japan. But it's also, I'm the son of an immigrant as well. And so to hear the story of the hustle and the grind and the sweat that was put into a business like that has become such a staple, it was really, really special. And so I really, really hope you enjoy this conversation. Please follow Korin on all platforms that are obviously linked in the description. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk and ask you all of these questions. It's really an honor to be here at the same time.
Thank you very much for coming here to Korin. I'm very excited to be with you. Yeah.
So I think that we were talking before the mics turned on that this ultimately is like a pilgrimage for chefs to come here.
Yeah.
And not just look at the knives, but potentially buy one of the most high-end pieces in their collection. At least that's how I felt.
Yes.
So what does that mean to you? How does that feel? How has that evolved over the years of owning this business?
Beginning, I thought about knives to open the many doors to Western chefs' world. And then I wanted to show the beautiful knives. Didn't mean I want to sell. I just want to show because it's so beautiful, and the craftsman's passion is in there. They make with their soul, and if they see the American chefs see it, I thought they feel it, even though it's not for everyday use. But amazingly, people love it, and then time to time they buy. Yeah.
It's such a different feeling picking up, because this was also a different shopping experience, like being in the showroom and you guys bring out the knives and you have them on these pads and you let people like really feel them and touch them, and it's so different from buying something online, you know, where like you can't do that, which was like, that was a real eye-opening experience for me early on coming here to shop, which was really, really interesting. Has that always been the vision of this, where chefs can come and try things? Or did you hear early feedback of chefs saying, I want to feel the knives, I want to try them? That was always what you wanted to do?
Yeah, at the beginning, there's not like this store existing. And the Japanese knives looks like Western style, Western knives, but it's a very different feeling, different weight, and different shape when you cut. So you have to have it. You have to feel it. You have to have like a comfortable feeling, and then even like within so many so many Japanese Western style knives until you feel, this is it. This is my favorite, fit to my hand. You need a time to experience.
And I think what was so special about shopping here early for me too is there's an educational element with different steel makeups that a lot of Western style knives maybe don't talk about. Like they just say, oh, well, this is our one chef knife that we offer. But as you can see around here, there's like so many different shapes, and different brands have different lines of knives with different use cases. And that's what I think is special about Japanese makers. But you guys have been so good at helping to educate us chefs about this is what you have to know about this type of steel. And when a knife is this hard, this is what you need to keep in mind. And I always tell the story on the channel about like, I learned how to sharpen from standing there and watching sharpening happen. And you guys would have the videos playing over there of sharpening, and I would just come to the shop and stand here and watch things happening because there's an educational element. So when you guys are thinking about educating chefs, that's super important. How do you navigate that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had no choice. Like at the beginning, when I started this, offering Japanese Western style knives to American chefs, it was in 1990.
Wow.
1990, 31 years ago.
I wasn't born yet.
And at the beginning, I started giving away to the Western chefs I know.
Yeah.
And everyone were very happy. So I thought, it can be good. Then when I started selling, everyone complains, this is bad because it's so easily shipping and it's defective. It's rust so quickly. I need education. I need to educate the American chefs. Looks same, but it's very different. It's lighter, sharper, but why lighter? Because blade is so thin, and also Japanese knives are very, metal is very hard. So if you don't have a very good arm control, it will chip even though you don't cut anything hard one. So, but no one trusts the Korin. No one knows about the Korin. So I thought maybe the education is the key to introduce. And then I didn't have a power. That's why I asked Chef John George or Chef Bure, who loves Japanese culture, Japanese knives. And the Chef John George's comment back then, 1991, the
Wow.
catalog, he said, Japanese knives are so delicate. They're very difficult to use, but the ones you master how to use the Japanese knives, it's like a Ferrari. The joy of using it is very different from any other knives. And I was so touched. What a comment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but the education was the key because it's new to American chefs.
Absolutely. You continue that
Yes.
education. You talk a lot about being a bridge between chefs and knife makers, between Japan and the U.S. Can you talk a little bit more about why education is so important to you? Not maybe from the business side, but to you personally.
Yeah, because once chefs knows how to use the Japanese Western style knives properly, they can maximize the enjoyment. It's very sharp because Japanese cuisine is very delicate, and everything is very thin sliced and eatable by chopsticks. And so it's a very different culture. But why not learning totally different culture by using the different knives and different utensils, and also the craftsman's passion is so this is my motivation,
Right.
and this is my joy to introduce Japanese style knives, because if I can be a connector between craftsmen to chefs. Chefs can really enjoy more because every time you use Japanese style knives, you always remember what I said. It stays forever. And then I always go back to Japan and tell craftsmen how happy the American chefs. Then they are very happy because
I was going to say, what do they say? What do they say when you share that?
I will try to make it better.
That's crazy. Wow. So you've shared a little bit about this new rise in Chinese makers too, because but I feel like not just you think this, but there's a common sentiment amongst chefs too, that there's this lack of soul, maybe. There's a lack of care in the production of, even though they might be cheaper, maybe they can achieve the same hardness, maybe the design they're mimicking a little bit from Japan, but from what I'm hearing you say, it's not the same. They're not the same, Chinese and Japanese makers, not quite yet.
I think machine-made knives and handcrafted knives is very different. Even look like the same and the same exactly same shape, but when you see it, you can feel it. It's alive. It has a soul in it. So I'm not really targeting the big market or anything. I just want to introduce my home country's tradition because this is a dying craftsmanship. If there's no market, they cannot survive, continue crafting these traditional knives, and then next generation don't want to do it. And it's not about money for them, for the next generation sons, how they can decide, I want to take, carry on father's or grandfather's traditional knife crafting skills. It's of course pride. If they see all the overseas customers adore and appreciate the beauty of the handcrafted knives and enjoy using it and mix American or overseas chefs' work will be better, or this knife can help their everyday life more enjoyable at the work. That is the motivation for them. So that's why it is very important to bring the chef to Japan, show the knife crafting, because not only chefs are very touched, but also the craftsmen are very happy seeing the chefs come from overseas. This is something really unbelievable experience for them. So introducing the real American chefs to them in person is really the best way. But the second best is through the words and the pictures and the videos. And so.
Well, I think what's missing potentially from American makers or Chinese makers or wherever you want to say that, I think is so interesting and long-lasting about Japan is that you have this culture of masters that cook, masters that make knives, masters that sharpen knives, masters that make handles for knives. There's just these specialties across the board, and you guys continuing to highlight that is that's how it continues generation after generation after generation.
Yes. Japan is the maybe number one country who has over 100 years old businesses or craftsmanship. Kyoto's very small stores, over 150 years, over 390 years of restaurants, and because they keep they're like a family tradition.
And it's like it continues to, the job opportunities continue, and the trajectory of making a career exists in that system. So that's super important. Speaking a little bit about pride, I can only imagine you feel a lot of pride coming up on 40 years of this business next year. Because the story goes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were a waitress and you saved $2,000 in tip money.
Yes.
And then you used that to buy inventory for this shop.
Yes.
So can you tell a little bit about that story? Maybe some details that you don't get shared all that often, because we have time to get into the funny details if you have.
So before I came here, I was a school teacher for 2 years, but since I was little, my dream was going to overseas to introduce Japanese culture, kimono wearing, flower arrangement, and tea ceremony. But as soon as I came here, I was 25. I realized no one is interested in these things. Then my life was started in a very hard way, and just make living was already very hard here. And then after 3.5 years of staying here, I learned American culture, and I didn't speak English much, so I learned the minimum useful English, and I adapted this culture, and I adjusted because culture is so different. Then I thought about what can I do. I don't want to go back to Japan, but still waitress. So okay, maybe I know about the Japanese restaurants. So, but I cannot open the Japanese restaurant. I'm not a cook. I don't have a management skill. I don't have a money. Hey, but I'm young and healthy, and I know about the Japanese restaurants, like how they are operating. And if I sell something to a Japanese restaurant, I don't have to speak English. Oh,
fascinating.
So I want to minimize my weakness. And then I just want to focus my strengths. My strengths, young and healthy. And I know about the Japanese restaurant. Then I targeted the Japanese restaurant. And then I collected beautiful porcelains since I was small.
Right.
So I called a neighbor. I called uncle, but not relative, but next door.
Right.
Uncle, I want to sell Japanese dishes to American market. Then okay. Then they gave me the catalog, but that was the wrong catalog. That was a household catalog. But I didn't know the difference between restaurant use or household. But I saved $2,000 from that tipping.
Yeah.
And then sent $2,000, and I got 5 cartons. And I didn't know how to declare the product or anything. I thought like a postman will deliver like a regular mail.
Like a normal package. So you were saying you thought that they would just arrive with like a normal package.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then, this neighbor's export manager came that time in a good timing. He said, "Saori, what about your package?" So I said, "I'm waiting." "Oh, you have to have a customer house broker. You have to do all these things." I didn't know, but I didn't know anything about. So it was like a life learning journey.
Sure.
We started from that point, and it was really great experience. I didn't have money. I didn't have to make a very big mistake. So
those are the best lessons.
yes,
right?
And then I went very slowly, like a toddler is walking very slow.
Crawling first. So, do you remember what those first hires that you made? Because, like, obviously, you're saying you grew slowly.
Yes.
You were obviously thinking about expanding inventory.
Like the first 1 year, I still worked as a waitress because I couldn't use this seed money, and I have to still support myself by working. So first 1 year was very good, rehearsal time. And then after 1 year, slowly, like a restaurant owner said, you have something you really want to do, so you can you can leave the restaurant, because I felt he hired me, and he gave me a lot of advices, because he was the Japanese restaurants pioneer. So when I told him I want to start selling the Japanese dishes, he encouraged me. Right, you can do it. So I didn't want to quit so soon, but he told me, you did enough. So I worked at the Japanese restaurant for 4 years, 7 months.
Whoa.
At the one restaurant,
Yeah.
first and the last.
Wow.
And then he became my first customer.
Amazing.
And he bought like 1,200 teacups. And I couldn't believe, and he never need that much many teacups. So it was a 120 capacity restaurant.
Right.
1,200 pieces of teacups are very big support for me, like encouragement.
That's
so
incredible.
I never forget. Yeah.
What was the Japanese restaurant scene like in New York back then?
Back then,
Yeah.
the assorted sushi for regular was $3.50. And the second grade was $5.
Wow.
And the best sushi assortment, 1 roll of tekamaki and 8 pieces of nigiri. The best one was $6
Oh my
in
goodness.
1979.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
No, 1978.
Sure.
Mm.
So how do you stay connected to Japan now? Do you like to do certain things when you go travel back? Obviously, you're talking to makers all the time, but,
All the time.
what is your preference to keep that connection with Japan?
The boss, just visiting the makers. We have 23 active makers, plus like a time-to-time ordering. So altogether over 50 makers to work with. So I am going back to Japan constantly, but I cannot visit everyone. So always sending emails, and we carry around 3,000 products. But all the product I selected, and also I am making all the purchase orders. So if nothing is going on, I just keep quiet. If it doesn't come then I call. I call line. When I started, 1 minute telephone call was $3.25. Calling from Japan to US was $7.
A minute.
A minute.
Wow.
I couldn't call, and then they couldn't call.
Sure.
And back then, maybe I didn't have that many distributors or the makers in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But we are like a friend, because since I started, they've been really supporting me, or giving me the good product. And 9/11 time, I called everyone, I cannot pay, and they all of them said, no problem.
Wow.
I will wait for you until you recover, because this area became a frozen zone for 3 months, so we couldn't do anything for 3 months. But
did you feel the same with the pandemic?
Pandemic was not so hard.
Because you guys still had
business-wise.
online.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had online, and also I had many obstacles. At the beginning, Gulf War, and after Gulf War's very serious recession. It was in 1991 January.
Yep.
The war ended. War was ended in March. It was only a very short war, but after that, very long recession. So 1991 and 2001, 9/11, 2008, the Lehman shock, and now pandemic. And then this time I thought, I thought my age is I can be retired. So I was a little bit relaxed, and it was very peaceful, and the Lehman shock wasn't so hard mentally. But then this COVID was happened. Then I learned, uh, it's always like one after the other.
Right.
Always, never ending. 7 to 10 year cycle. Something is coming like a hurricane.
That's so important because it's true. Like in the 40-year lifespan of a business, what, you think it's going to be easy? No, it can't be easy.
Cannot be, maybe I cannot say easy,
Yeah.
but I never thought it's so hard. Like I was so busy focusing
Right.
to solve the problem.
Right.
So I had no time to think about, too much or too hard. But thinking back now, for past 40 years or 43 years in New York life, I thought it's all very necessary challenges. Like every challenge I experience, I have to come up with a solution. And then every time I get a little bit better, a little bit smarter, and a little bit more like capable to deal with the challenges. So this is a very necessary challenges. And finally, this time, no problem. Really, mentally, the business-wise, the restaurants and the hotels are locked down. So business-wise, first couple months of no business. But like I felt like came again. Okay, I should be able to do something, and this might be a good opportunity to think about everything as like a white canvas.
Yeah, wiped clean.
Yes.
Yeah, fresh start.
Yes. So from this experience, I increase much more appreciation to our customers because they have been supporting us. That's why I could continue 40 years. And this, I thought I knew it, and I was always very grateful. But this time, pandemic, really, I reconfirmed why I can be still here. It's because of the customers.
That's so inspiring that you've continued to think about it like that, because a lot of, every time there's a big global catastrophe, businesses fail and people buckle for reasons that are sometimes not their fault, but like the way that you think about just, it's an obstacle. I need to get better. I will come out of the other side more capable. That's super inspiring.
And I think I learned from the Japanese craftsmen and also chefs, because chefs are always ongoing.
That's true.
And no matter what happened at the kitchen,
You got to make it happen.
Yes, you gotta make it happen, right? So in the dining room, in the stage, everyone is enjoying. Even you forgot to order the fish, you have to come up with the
Solution.
So I am in the right industry, and I grew in this hospitality industry. And one last thing I really want to say, when I started this idea, I went to the Japanese bank, Sumitomo Bank, at the One World Trade Center, because that time, New York Times said, Japan's Sumitomo Bank became world's largest bank. I was a waitress. I was 28. And but when I want to do the business, I want to open an account at the world's largest bank. And then between lunch and dinner break time, I went to One World Trade Center to open the account. I never knew they are a trading bank.
Sure.
They don't have a retail, but I went there, 91st floor, and I told the receptionist I want to open the account. And she said, okay. And then she led me to the very nice conference room on the 91st floor. I saw a Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. And then Mr. Hasegawa came. And then he was 6 years old, older than me. I found out later. But
Wow.
that time, he looked so much older than me. I was 28. And then he started asking me so many weird questions. Japanese men can do it. American men never do it. But he said, are you married?
Where's your husband? Yeah.
What does he need to know if I'm married or not? And what kind of business and all kind of silly questions.
Right.
And then biggest question was, if your husband say, let's go back to Japan, you wanna go back to Japan with your husband? I said, no. Even I'm divorced, I will stay here.
I'm staying in New York.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then even such a very tiny business, if I continue 50 years, the business will have a good good shape, and then I will continue for 50 years. So nowadays, I'm turning to 40 years, and I thought, 80% is done.
Right.
So 10 more years. Yes, so I am very happy that I said that, because that memory stayed with me for 40 years. And when I was very discouraged and very sad and I couldn't find a solution, I always thought about that word. I committed for 50 years. If I give up now, who's gonna trust me? I cannot give up. Once I give up, next time, if I want to do something, no one will give me the opportunity. No one will support me. No one believe in me. So that was the biggest motivation. And 10 more years, I feel like I can do it. So
The fascinating thing to me about that legacy and that tenure that you've had so far is that you guys were talking about chefs and partnering with chefs before it was standard industry practice. And now, even through the conversations that we've been having between all of us that are here now, you guys are looking towards working with chefs in even more close partnership capacity, with asking for recommendations like you've done in the past, but through being able to offer some pretty exciting partnerships with them. And that says something about you not being stuck in the old ways, being able to look forward and say, what opportunities does this give to our business, being able to work with chefs in this way?
Thank you so much for asking me. I almost forgot about the very important things. When I started Korin, the Japanese community here, or maybe in the state, was very closed and very small and very isolated. I see it. Japanese chefs and American chefs has no connections. So not only introducing the Japanese product to American customers, I really hoped if Japanese chefs and American chefs can make a very good friendship, then both sides can learn a lot and can exchange the skills or techniques or Japanese style sauce or anything. So that was a really big thing for me. That's why it took a long time, but I started the Gohan Society in 2005. Japanese chefs are very reserved compared to American chefs. So I thought Japanese chefs can be a master chef to offer how to cut the fish in Japanese way, or vegetable peeling or knife cutting skills. And then whoever the interested the American chefs can attend. And then once there's interactive experiences happen. After that, American chefs are very outgoing and expressive, so they visit the master chef's restaurant to ask more.
Right.
So I was so happy to see it. Yeah, and the chef's night out is the same. Yeah,
Such a good party.
Yeah, both chefs are coming and mingling and drinking, eating together. And always I want to introduce the Japanese ingredients and the food. I ask the Japanese chefs to volunteer, and
When you go back to Japan and you can pick your city, Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, any of the other cities, what's the first thing you eat when you get back?
Kanazawa.
Aha.
Yeah, Kanazawa City, Japan's most traditional, keeping the traditional craft and cuisine and beautiful and castles. So that's why Gohan Society's scholarship programs were always bringing the chefs to Kanazawa first.
Right.
And then after that, Tokyo, Kyoto, or Osaka for knife crafting. But Kanazawa is the best place for me.
So when you go back to Kanazawa, is there a food that you crave, that you want to eat when you're there? You're like, I need to have this when I go back.
Great seafood.
Served how?
Yeah.
Just as a sashimi, as a nigiri? How do you like to eat it?
All kinds. Just grill. If you have a very good fish, you don't need anything. It's just grill lightly with binchotan charcoal.
Yeah, simple but special.
And
yeah.
they have a very good fish market there.
Right. So, is there anything that you mentioned you're excited about the next 10 years for Korin? You feel like you're capable and you're ready to do it. Is there anything that you have your sights set on that you're like, I'm very excited to do this in the next 10 years of Korin?
I like to know more about the Japanese traditional utensils that the Japanese chefs in Japan has been using it. And then I've been trying to do, but I like to do more because 10 years is my goal, but I never know. I'm not a robot, so tomorrow's
That's
health
right.
condition or life, I never know. So I will work very hard to introduce the Japanese craftsman's word and passion to American chefs, and I will try to get more younger people to do more better than me after I'm gone. If still the same passion people can continue this, I'd be really very happy.
You mentioned the next generation of chefs. I always like to ask my guests, what do you think chefs can be doing better to help the next generation, to teach them? Have you seen anything that you're like, I think chefs should be doing more of that?
Yeah, I think how you can work very hard when you understand the importance of hard work, importance of never giving up, patience. If older generations chef can teach the benefit of being patient and hard work, then younger generation chef can stay in this. And I think talent is one thing, but the most talented thing is patience and hard work. If you continue doing this until you achieve. So if you continue until you achieve, everyone can achieve. That's how I thought about when I started Korin. If I'm not rush, if I can be patient, if I don't set when I should be this much or that much, I just continue to work hard until I feel I did it. So then now I feel like maybe 50%. So I want to really final 10 years. If I can have a final 10 years, I really want to try my very best. I can do more. And
I think I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I think I speak for a lot of chefs when I say thank you to you and to this space and for everything that you do for the industry, not just education-wise, but highlighting chefs and helping us find the right knife to work with every single day, because we really do spend hours and hours and hours with your tools. Like I have knives that I bought here that are coming up on 10, 11, 12 years old, and that's
Yes.
really, really special. So thank you not just for the time today, but for everything that you do and allowing me to host us here, and this is unreal for me, so thank you. But my last question was going to be, is there a knife as you look around us that might have a special story, or it's one of your favorites that's in the shop right now, or it has a special connection to a maker? Like if you look around, is there a special knife that you're like, there's a cool story there?
yes, I have one. Maybe after this interview, I like to show you.
Please.
So you can take a picture, because this is by Keijiro Doi, the blacksmith. He already passed away in 2017.
Wow.
When he was 90, and he worked until 85. His life was I want to make it better than yesterday. That's why I was so inspired. I want to do the same. And I have like a final special limited edition 001.
Wow.
I found it because former Chiharu, who was knife sharpener, and he passed away in 2018. He hid it, and I found it.
What a find. That's
It
amazing.
was in the cabinet, and I found it, and then I remembered what Keijiro Doi said. His knife is very special and beautiful, but he wanted to let chefs use it, not just collect and display as a collection. So when I found it, I didn't want to sell, but at the same time, where is the best place for this knife? At the chef's place.
Right.
So we are going to introduce online.
Wow.
When it's ready.
Time. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm very excited to see that knife. I think what I will do is, for people watching, we might put it on the community page as a supplemental video, as a fun supplement to this episode, and links for that will be down in the description for everybody. But thank you again. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to touch on? Otherwise, that's everything I wanted to ask. So just thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much again, and I am so grateful to have this opportunity, because I am very, very deeply appreciated, and I feel like I found my life in the States, and by doing this, my life became so much more meaningful. So thank you very much.
Congratulations for 40 years.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
What's up? Justin here again. Because, I mean, if you're still listening, you didn't not like this episode, right? And if that's the case, I'd like to think that you'd get value from the other work that I share here online. It's all focused on helping chefs and hospitality professionals perform better. If you don't have a lot of time, the best place to start is with the email newsletter that I write every single week called the 80/20 Edge. That's where I share knowledge on sharpening your skills, asymmetric upside, and exploring the industry beyond the status quo. And I say it saves time because I include all of the content that I publish that week all in one place as kind of a weekly digest of sorts. Next up, you should check out my YouTube channel for gear reviews, clips from podcasts just like this one, and documented experiences from some of the best restaurants in the world. And lastly, if you'd like to learn about my intense cohort-based professional development focused course, get coaching from me to help you make your next move, or just support the show, you can check out justinkhanna.com/support. And if you do support this show already, that's greatly appreciated. Thank you. Finally, it really does help to share a review of this show on Apple Podcasts to help the podcast universe know that people like us like shows like this. And until the next episode, my name is Justin Khanna, and I hope you have a good one.